thank you everyone for joining us again, and we'll get started with the panel. And who wants to go first? Carla, since you're in the middle, you start first.
Sure, I'd love to. Hi everyone, my name is Carla. I am a new transfer student at Stanford, or in my second year at Stanford. I transferred from a community college in Connecticut called CT State. I'm from the Northwestern campus, so all the way on the other side of the country. I am an anthropology major at Stanford, on a psychology track, or like with the concentration in psychology. And I'm also a single mom. I have an 11-year-old son who is in fifth grade. Yeah, and I think that's a good start. Is there anything else I should add there, Jobin?
I don't know. What's your favorite food?
Oh, my favorite food. You know, I love shrimp, and I love shrimp so much that I made myself allergic to them. So it's a
Ooh,
fun fact as well.
very cool. We'll go with Gazal. You go next.
Hello, I'm Ghazal. I am a new transfer student, so it's my first year here. Probably going to major in biology, but not really sure about that yet. I transferred from Santa Monica College down in LA, and oh, I'm an immigrant from Iran. I came to the States 2022. So if you have any questions, I know it's like complicated on how to navigate being an out-of-state student, whatever. So if you have any questions regarding that, I would be happy to answer. Anything else I should add?
And you biology major, and what's your favorite food?
Oh, favorite food? I have to go with tahchin, and it's spelled Tahchin. So if you want to look that up, looks good, taste it as well as it looks. So.
All right, and then we'll go. Summer, you go next.
Hi, my name is Summer Wahab. I recently transferred to Stanford from City College of San Francisco. I grew up in the foster care system and have been previously incarcerated. Have gone to rehab. I'm a recovering addict, and um, what was I gonna say? I stood as a commencement speaker at City College, and that was a great opportunity. I just want to inspire as many community college students as I can, to keep going and to overcome all their hardships. Um, Anything else?
And you have 3 little ones, right?
Yes, I have three kids. They're 13, 4, and 5.
And what's your favorite food?
Pasta.
All right, we'll go with Mr. Duncan.
Hi, I'm David. I'm a incoming transfer to Stanford University from Santa Monica College. I'm currently planning to major in math and economics. I'm mainly interested in public policy and advocacy work. I've had a bit of a circuitous path through education. When I was in my freshman year of high school, my grandmother became really sick and I dropped out to take care of her. I spent a few years doing a bunch of different things, working, community organizing, and continuing to learn about policy and economics. And then eventually I returned to school at Santa Monica College. I'm happy to discuss my experiences and be of whatever help I can be. As far as my favorite food goes, it's probably udon.
All righty, and last but not least, Sebastian.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Sebastian Pintea. I'm currently a senior at Stanford. I transferred from Santiago Canyon College. That's my local community college in Southern California. And right now I'm studying environmental systems engineering with a minor in Spanish on the pre-med track. So my passion kind of relies on the intersection of the environment and climate change and its impacts on health. And then I would say that my favorite food is probably sushi.
All righty. Well, this is kind of your time. So you guys that are attending, put your questions in the Q&A and we'll ask the speakers. We will, first question is, how long did you guys spend at community college before transferring?
I can go first. I was there for a just like fall, spring semester, and I also went to school for one summer and one winter. So kind of 2.5 years.
I'll go next. So I was in community college beginning in 2016 when my son was a toddler. A huge piece of that was to break cycles and of poverty. And I was a single mom at the time. I've been a single mom for the last 10 years. And when I first started in community college, I had to take online courses, and I assumed for many years after that that I had to work full time. I mean, I was really struggling, even just making ends meet doing that. And then taking like a class or two online and doing my homework and stuff after my son went to bed. And that's how I did it for many years, just like knocking out one class at a time, year long, like over the summer and everything. And then I had a conversation in 2021. So many years of doing that, just thinking there was no other way to crank through my degree, and kind of frustrated because I'm like, I'm not even gonna get my associates until I'm like 30, much less my bachelor's. Um, but then I want to share this with you guys just in case you're also first generation and don't know this, but I had a conversation in 2021 with another single mom who was in her 50s at that point, and she had told me, like, I was telling her about how I was just cranking through slowly but surely, and she's like, "Oh, you can take out student loans for your living expenses, right?" And for me, that was like it's one of those things that are like supposedly common knowledge that everybody knows. I didn't know that at 30 years old. So, right from there, I moved into, I literally went home and signed up full time. It was in a summer semester as well. And that was really when I just dove into my schoolwork. I did have to take out a ton of loans to survive through community college. But yeah, so I was in community college from 2016 to 2024. I don't know why I have to think about that. No, last year was my first year. 2023. I'm sorry. The years kind of blend. So that's a long time. So I just wanted to share that whole story in case you didn't know that. So about taking out student loans.
Does anybody else want to answer that, or?
Sure. I mean, I can go. I spent about two years at SMC. My first year was part-time and my second year was full-time.
I tried, I had two attempts at community college. Obviously, I had rough patches in the years of 2014 and 2016. Between those years, I tried community college, but I ended up homeless and with my daughter, and it was just so many challenges. And at the time, the community college didn't have any resources for me, and they didn't really care to help me. So it took me a long time. Obviously, I went through a lot of challenges in my life between then and 2022. I enrolled back in college of the spring. So it took me 3 years the second time to finish. And I did pretty well. And I would just say, like, no matter what, you could take as long as you want, whatever makes you comfortable. So yeah.
Yeah, I went to community college for 2 years. For both of those years, it was full time. but I know people that went there for as long as like up to 5 or like even 6 years, I believe. And so it's kind of different based off of what your path looks like, but don't feel like you need to follow the cardinal rule of like, oh, you can only go to CC for 2 years until and then they'll give you like a slap on the wrist or something. So yeah.
Very cool. So does uh, choosing a major affect your chances of getting into Stanford? Um, so like for example, the UC's certain majors are impacted. Is that an issue at Stanford?
One of the people who have been here longer would probably answer that better, but as far as I understand, everyone enters Stanford undeclared. So it really doesn't matter the major that you put in, it's more about your story and who you are and what you did with your life. And you come here, you get to choose a major, even if on your application you said biology, you can go and get a major in classics. That's totally fine.
Also, I want to say that I think there's kind of this trope, like if you're applying to Stanford, you need to be into tech. I'm not a tech person at all. And actually, I suppose this is not like proven or anything, but I applied with the intention, I put all in my application, like I want to study anthropology, I want to be in the humanities. And the more I've talked with people here at Stanford, if you put in your application, like I want to study CS or one of the big majors that Stanford is famous for, unless you're like at the very top, it might be harder actually for you to get in because then you're competing with all the other people around the world that want to get into that. So I think that me putting in anthropology and humanities might have raised my chances because anthropology is one of the smaller departments and they really want like a well-rounded student population here for sure. So like don't feel like you have to fit any sort of box that Stanford wants for you. There is no Stanford box. And I think like what Ghazal was saying, like just being your authentic self in your application is everything, especially in with AI, they can see through that. So don't do it with AI. Just be yourself. Like I went back through at one point and looked at my application, and this is so embarrassing to say, but like I did my whole application in literally 2 days, and I'm ashamed to say this, but I didn't really reread what I wrote, or I did like a very quick read through, and I had like grammar mistakes and like one spelling mistake that was just like a there, and there sort of issue, like super embarrassing. But I was rushing to get my application in because I'm just like, hey, I need to apply to the best school in the world for anthropology. Um, they saw through that, and even now, like looking back at my application, I'm just so embarrassed and like they saw my potential though, which was pretty cool. And so yeah, just don't be afraid to be exactly who you are today. Just put it all out there. There's no harm in it.
Alrighty, this is a question. How big was the jump from the rigors of education from community college to Stanford?
Based on my perspective, I did take a lot of online classes due to being like a single mom and both my kids were extremely young when I enrolled in community college. So it was definitely a big jump because there's like one class I have to read like 12 books. We're reading a book every single week. There is a lot of assignments, but there's also you just have to prioritize setting time aside. It is definitely demanding, but it's also doable. Especially like if you don't have any children, you can definitely set time aside every day or on the weekends to do your work. Um, but it is actually pretty demanding.
Yeah, it is very demanding, but I personally, I dropped my unit count significantly. I used to take like 15, 16 in community college. Even I went up to 20. First quarter at Stanford, I took only 12 units, and like one of them is swimming. So I made it easier for myself, but it's doable. You have to read a lot. I don't think I've read this many articles in my whole life. That like I read more articles in the past 2 months that I've read in my whole life. More books, not really more books. I was a reader, but it's heavy, but it's doable. It's nothing crazy.
Yeah, I think what made it harder was mainly going from the semester to the quarter system because I was used to that for like, the past 2 years. And so, and also with Stanford, some of their quarter system classes, like I compare to other like quarter system schools and they fit way more into it, especially within the physics department. And so I think that was a other very drastic change and like seeing, like realizing that I also had to basically teach myself for a good amount of my science classes because most of the professors they do care a little bit more about their research than teaching, and I think it's often reflective within their own content and the way that they present it. And so if anything that made me better at studying, I think it really forced me to see what were my weaknesses. And so I would say that after like the first 2 quarters, I feel like I was able to get the swing of things, and then now it's like kind of just natural. So I feel like once you adapt, Stanford is not as hard. Of course, there will be hard classes that you will have to take in the future. That's it. That's like inevitable. But I wouldn't say it's like my quality of education was like drastically different. And so that's what I would say on this part.
Yeah, I mean, I second that too. The quarter system is a lot faster, and at least there's a lot more writing to compared to my CC courses that I remember. At least as far as like rigor goes, I haven't found it to be that bad just yet. Knock on wood, of course. But uh, I do think that like part of what I've been dealing with is just there's a lot more pressures on my time. It feels like between doing research and clubs, and there's just so much more opportunity here. It's kind of difficult to balance everything.
Yeah, I'm gonna second what everyone said. The transition from semester to quarter was big. I actually really enjoyed it. I feel like being in humanities that the discussions and what we're learning is more dynamic, more in depth, and I've loved that personally. My big thing was like moving from community college, which felt a little like policing, like a big emphasis on those basic skills, like getting your stuff in on time. Um, y you know, like making sure you have your structures to the expectations or whatever. Where at Stanford, it's felt a little more open-ended, a little more flexible. And so it's been really nice that I can like be human in a way and then have these really intellectually stimulating conversations. But I've also, so like that was kind of an adjustment because I assumed professors would be like very similar or even more so like, okay, you got to reach these specific goals and points. And it's not like that at all for me. It was more like, we just want you to learn. um, the quarter system definitely forces or in a good way like encourages you to like really get deep into whatever you're learning very quickly. So like the second the quarter starts, you're in it. Which is a little different from semester because it's more drawn out. But I've liked now that I'm used to the quarter system, I've loved it because like I can really just immerse myself in these topics and have taken classes that like complement each other to only further my immersement in whatever it is that I will am studying that quarter. So yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit.
All right, this is another question. How you all dealt with imposter syndrome And if so, how have you managed to deal with it? I think everybody deals with imposter syndrome. Anybody wants to share?
I think the other students should share because being a parent, like I live separate than everyone else. So it's hard to make friends and feel like I'm a bit older, so like being in a class with a bunch of freshmen, like everybody wants to sit away from me and no one knows me. So it's like I definitely still feel it till this day. So I feel like everyone else should answer that. But how I just go on about my life. I'm here for an education. Also talk in your classes. There's one particular class where I made friends and they made me feel valued. They made me feel heard. Definitely participate in all the activities. They have a bunch of stuff here and you can meet new people and I'll make it easier.
I I think thank you for that, Summer, because like last year, I'm in my second year here at Stanford, and all last year I felt very similar to what Summer was saying. Like me and her are like the only undergrad. We're both single moms. We live right across from each other. Um, but last year I didn't have summer. Even just your presence is everything. Because given our situation, we're undergrads living in family housing. We are like at least 10 years older than these undergrads that we're in classes with. And it makes for an interesting dynamic because like at first, like the younger students would look up to me and be like, "Oh, you would know the answer to this because you're the same age as the professor or whatever." I mean, they wouldn't outright say that, but that's what would happen. And I'm like, "I'm an academic baby. I have no idea what's going. Like I'm here to learn too." So that was kind of an adjustment and to feel like, oh, sorry, my cat is entering the screen here. To feel like that was really hard because it's like my professor, I've had multiple professors now that are the same age as me, and it's like they're at Stanford and they've gone through, they've done so much, and here I am, I don't even have my bachelor's yet, and feeling like even these like freshmen, sophomore have accomplished some crazy, amazing things and are so articulate. And this year, things have really changed for me. I think time has really helped me to accept like I belong here just as much as everyone else does. My story looks a little different from the majority, other than Summer, like everyone else, but also so is everyone else. Everyone else has their own unique stories that make them who they are here. Like, I have a friend from Indonesia, and she's like the only one from Indonesia. And like, just mine is more external, I guess, like because of my age. But also, like, being at Stanford is already such a unique experience, and like, being unique on top of that, just I was looking at that as a very negative thing for a while, and then I'm like, how cool is it that that I can really like take advantage of grad stuff and undergrad and be a part of both worlds, and which is like blossomed into a ton of different opportunities. So I think a lot of it is just like understanding, I'm sorry, I talk a lot too. Is like we all feel imposter syndrome, and all of us, even like the smartest people you know at Stanford, because Stanford has this global name to it. And we all start somewhere. And the professors that are like the same age as me are like, I didn't go to Stanford in undergrad. Like, this is really cool that you're here. And I'm like, oh, it is. So it's very normal.
Yeah, I also I'm gonna go back a little bit to my community college experience. I cannot tell you how many times my counselor at community college literally forced me to apply to Stanford. I was like, I'm not getting accepted. Why would they take me? And like she literally like I would go to her like since my second semester, and she was like, yeah, you need to apply to IVs. And I was like, no, I'm not getting accepted. She convinced me the summer before I had to apply. So it's a universal it's a universal experience. Like last year I was sitting where you all are sitting and Carla was giving a speech and I was like, maybe I apply. And so it's none of us believed that we would get accepted. I talked to so many transfers. I live in Kimball. It's no one thinks they would get accepted, literally. It's don't think I think don't be afraid of your GPA. Someone in our cohort like just took everyone's GPA and I think average was 3.8. David, do you know? I don't, something like that. So you don't have to have a 4.0 GPA. You don't have to have sent 5 rockets to the space, cured cancer, and like solved a very important humanitarian issue. I think we all experience it. I experienced it today, but again, I walk through campus and I have to walk across the church to get to my classes every day, and I'm like, I'm here. Like a year ago, you would tell me I'm here, and I wouldn't believe you. And when I experience imposter syndrome here now, I try to remind myself of that. And we talk a lot among transfers, and we are all experiencing that. So it's when I know that other people are going through the same thing from different aspects, it makes me feel better. Everyone, no one feels like they're doing great. That's just take off that pressure off of your shoulder, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Sebastian,
definitely,
since you're this, oh, sorry. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome, it's definitely something I've experienced too. I think it's something a lot of Stanford students, but especially transfer students, go through. I think, like Basil said, I needed a lot of encouragement to apply in the first place, too. My student government advisor convinced me about like 48 hours before the deadline. Um, but I think, yeah, at Stanford, I think people tend to talk about duck syndrome a lot. Basically, the idea is everybody seems so effortlessly impressive, sort of like a duck swimming along, but in reality, they're paddling furiously under the surface to keep going. Um, I how I deal with a lot of it is I just try to remind myself that I feel like a lot of what we're able to accomplish is through hard work and persistence. So I just try to lock in, keep moving, and just give it my best.
Sebastian, since you're a senior and you've been there the longest, do you want to share a little bit?
Sure thing. So regarding imposter syndrome, I mean, it's something I experienced in kind of like a different capacity because I think my cohort especially had an exceptionally diverse range of transfers, especially age-wise. And so I think what made me, if anything, a bit like kind of insecure, I guess, was like I had a very traditional community college background. Like I'm like, wow, these people all have very impressive life stories. And like yeah, I went straight from community college after high school, finished my degree or 2 in 2 years from community college. And so it was like, I guess, like kind of syndrome in that case, and also seeing and hearing about other Stanford students and like and all of their accomplishments as well, which is just incredible. But I think over time, I just became very confident, like in myself and my abilities. And also after reading my own admissions file, and kind of getting some insight into that as well. And so, I mean, this also may sound bad, but it's also true. But Stanford, there's definitely like a couple, like a subset of students that, are usually legacies or Nepo babies. And I've had many of conversations with them. And I think that further reminds me that I definitely deserve to be here, just based off of those interactions alone. And so I think it's just like over time, and especially those of you who are new transfers at Stanford or those who will be applying, I think instilling confidence in yourself like early in the process is going to help a lot, especially as you find opportunities and continue to grow. I think now what I'm still trying to get over, I'm still guilty of, is definitely the whole concept of duck syndrome. Like everything is fine on the surface, but in reality it's not, and you're like trying to stay afloat to maintain a sense of equilibrium throughout your education at Stanford. But other than that, I would say I wouldn't like dwell on it too much. I think Stanford, they chose you for a reason. Even though applying here Like I was the first person from my community college to ever be accepted to Stanford and a bunch of other like private schools that I applied to on the East Coast. And so navigating that process was very difficult. But I think if anything, it made me feel more like proud of myself. I was like, wow, I was able to do this and create a path for future CC students at my own community college to see that this is an option. So yeah.
All right, so this is another question. What attracted you all to Stanford compared to other schools? Um, like, is it because like the facilities, location, mentors? And you all got accepted other places. Why did you decide to go to Stanford?
I'll go first. Um, so I'm from Connecticut. I'm from New England, and I had a pretty good like setup where my son was in a great school out there. So I had applied only for schools actually other than Stanford on the East Coast. And so I was just within like an hour radius of my son's school. And so I was accepted into Mount Holyoke and Trinity College in Hartford. And I was trying to decide between those two and all the other schools. All these schools I like decide I was like brainstorming like where would I live? How would this all work out? And I had applied to Stanford just very casually as like my dream school because I mean at the time it was a 1% acceptance rate and I'm like that's not happening. I didn't even really tell anybody that I applied for Stanford and if I did I was just like yeah, I mean I had to throw my name in the hat. It's the top school for anthropology like but I was embarrassed to say that because I'm like no, of course that's like winning the lottery. And but I mean it's there's I like there were many professors here that I wanted to work with. Carol Dweck is this famous psychologist from here. She coined growth mindset, and I just met her, which was very cool. Um, but like everything at Stanford, it's one of the top schools that supports families too. And obviously, as a single mom, that's a huge deal for me because I applied for Yale. I didn't get into Yale, but even so, I'm really glad that didn't work out because like I think my life would have looked very different. Um, but also like just that change in culture for me, like East Coast to West Coast was a big deal. Yeah, yeah. So hopefully that offers some insight.
Yeah, I think specifically it was like the collaborative culture that really attracted me to Stanford because yeah, other schools they say they're like that, but in reality they aren't. Like I have some friends who are pre-med at Harvard and they're having the worst time of their life because of it's a very like toxic, especially at Berkeley too as well. And so what made Stanford unique in that sense is that like as someone who is pre-med, like they really foster a great culture with students helping each other. I will say I've definitely like had experiences with like a few bad apples and like office hours and whatnot, but like to the degree of like from how other people I know are experiencing, like it's made my pre-med experience like less stressful. Though I will say I know the chemistry department here is notoriously very bad. But they curve really well. I only had the pleasure of taking one chemistry class here because of transferring my Orgo and Gen Chem credits. But anyways, and so I think another part was also the research because I feel like the field of environmental health is still very novel. And I applied around the time that the Door School of Sustainability was also opening up. And I think that may have also potentially helped my chances because they're looking people to fill in that interest. And so in my application, I was very interested in sustainability and still am. I actually changed majors. I did want to come here to major in psych, but then I did a complete kind of 180 once I kind of got more into curriculum here at Stanford. And so like being able to find like a niche like subgroup of people that was interested in environmental health, like the Center of Human and Planetary Health, also with specific anesthesiologists that spearhead like that type of research as well. Like I was able to get experience like be connected with people before I even stepped foot on Stanford. And that already kind of gave me a very strong start to already finding what community looks like and also the types of opportunities that I wanted to get at Stanford. And like also like I remember I feel like in middle school I was hearing a lot about, you know, Stanford and Harvard, and these were like the top schools. And like initially I was like, I want to apply to Stanford because it's the hardest school to get into and just to see what happens. But obviously things like that molded over time. And so I realized I was like, this is definitely the right place for me. And I think that's really what I think makes Stanford special, is that they really do not discourage looking at different intersections within your own studies. And I think it really shows within their own curriculum as well, with the different types of requirements that they have first years and transfers complete as well.
Anyone else?
All right, we can take the next question. I'm trying to group like a couple of them. Can you explain like the process of transferring, like in terms of like the application? Like what are some of the questions that Stanford asked in the application? And like maybe some of the requirements, like did you have to do letters of recommendation? Or what were the kind of the components of the Stanford application?
Yeah, so with the transfer application, you use the Common App specifically for Stanford, and usually a bunch of other private schools also do that. And I believe they recommend like 2 to 3 letters, but they give you the option to submit, I believe, 4. And with that, Stanford is one of the schools that they asked a lot of essays. I remember there were like 3 250-word essays. One of them was you had the option to select between a community essay and then like write a letter to like a future roommate. And then they always ask like their little version of the intellectual vitality essay that basically says like, you know, what excites you. And then they also have another question about, I think it kind of, that one usually changes year by year, but for me it was like, what is something meaningful to you and why? And then they have like 5 or 6 50-word questions. And even though these ones are only 50 words, you should still equally put the same amount of effort. And I feel like I especially use those essays to leverage other interests in my application, but in a way that's still kind of connected to who I am as a person. Like usually they'll ask, if you have like an extra hour in a day, what would you do? What is an issue that you care about and why? Yeah, and then they have your main personal statement. And with transfer applications, it's interesting because when like usually with first year with applying at a high school, you submit like the same Common App essay to all the schools you apply to. But with transfers, it's different. Each school kind of calls their own shots, but usually Stanford, amongst many others, they ask you to submit in like a 650-word personal statement that outlines like what are your reasons for transferring and the objectives you hope to achieve. And that one, it's kind of up to you if you choose to make that Stanford specific, though I do know they do have an essay that says, you know, what is one thing you're looking forward to Stanford and why? And also, if you did apply to Stanford before, they also make you write another essay. I had to because I did apply in high school, early action. And so they made me write an essay that says, how have you grown since you last applied? They're one of the only schools that ask you to write an essay if you've applied there before, like a special one just for you. And so I would say definitely plan ahead for a lot of those essays. Like look at the prompts, put them in your own Google Drive and start brainstorming. And I would say definitely bullet point like first of all, how do you want to sell yourself to Stanford? And see like based off of the different parts of your application or your life story, like where do you want to plug that in based off of the essay prompts so you can best like so that way the admissions officers can get a better picture of who you are. But I would say it's definitely one of the tougher applications to complete just because of the amount of stuff that you have to do. But it's also definitely possible, especially if you plan ahead and given that other schools also have kind of similar requirements as well.
Advice I want to give about the application, what I did research on the specific major I was applying to. I did research on all the professors, and I researched their work, what they've done, and I implemented them in my essay. I've also implemented things that I would look forward to going to Stanford, like the clubs that they have, the programs that I would qualify for. Um, And just to really be yourself. Don't try to make it seem like so academically, like you're writing an essay and it needs to sound like a robot. No, you want to sound like yourself. They read thousands and thousands and thousands of applications. Why is yours going to stand out? Add some metaphors, add something you wouldn't see in an essay. Just make it stand out. Even talk about your life. Just anything like that. There's a reason why you wanted to go to Stanford. Talk about that. What made like me, I spoke about my uncle. He owned a store just a couple miles away from Stanford, and I grew up watching Stanford students, faculty, athletes, they would always come in his store when I was a little girl, and I always wanted to be them. And I lost my uncle in 2018 to cancer, and I talked about him and how much that motivated me to want to apply to Stanford. And so yeah, that's some advice I would give you about the application process. And obviously, like if you can get close to professors, let them know you in your life and because I really do believe to have strong recommendations do help.
I had a little bit of disconnection, so I hope to not say anything repetitive. But I think first of all, the most important thing is to write about actually what you're passionate about. I've read like so many of my peers' application when I got here. Right, I wrote about baking because I love baking. Like there was a question our year asking for what makes you interested about learning, and I wrote about baking. So be your exact self, and you don't need to be anybody else to be here. It's just, and if you write something else, and even if you do get accepted, then this school is not the best match for you because they were not looking for you. And one other thing is, if when you're introducing yourself and when you want to say something about yourself, back it up by experience. If I just tell you I'm resilient, you're like okay. But if I tell you I'm resilient because I went to 6 different schools from K to 12, I lived in 3 different countries, I'm just an immigrant, came here 3 years ago and I'm already thriving, then it's a believable phrase. Then it's human. So yeah, I think that's my most important advice.
Um, so I just want to love that Summer and I are both on this panel because like our applications were totally different, but we're like very similar demographic, which I think is interesting. Like I actually did the opposite from Summer and like I had never been out here. I'd never seen Stanford, so I made very little references to Stanford actually. But I think much as like what Ghazal and Sebastian are saying, like just being authentic and Summer, like just being authentic to yourself and having that real life experience to back it up, having your recommendations be able to say like, yeah, this person has these values. This is how they've shown those value or proven those values and through their action. And also like one thing I was thinking about too with the questions in the entire application is intense. There's a lot to answer, but to use that to your advantage because I really think Stanford is trying to gain a fully holistic view of you. And so try not to duplicate any information. Like each question should provide new information, even if it's just one line, like just get as much of yourself in the application as you can. Um, yeah. And I also believe that having good recommendations is key.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with what everybody else said. The essays are really the heart of your application, and authenticity is really important. I see like a lot of people that I talk to like psyching themselves out based on, essay advice they read online. At least what I would say is to try to block out a lot of these sort of essay writing guides and just write from the heart and say what makes you you. Um, I mean, aside from that, there are some like more technical portions of the application, like documents, things you need to get sent. It's important to get started on those early because sometimes things can go wrong and you want to make sure your application is fully considered. In particular, I had a really annoying time trying to get some documents about my high school career. Like I had to go to the State Board of Education to get them sent, and it was like weeks after the deadline. And I don't know. I mean, it worked out for me, but it's better to not put yourself in that situation and start sending things as soon as you can. Yeah.
And kind of as a follow-up to that, great timing because there's like some of our other questions that are specifically for like the writing part. So first part of it is like if you could rewrite your essays now, would you keep it the same? Would you emphasize something more or less? And another student is wondering like they notice like some essays can be like more poetic or creative. Like, is there a certain writing style that you wrote with, or did you just like answer the prompt?
Um, I don't think I would change my essays because the way I see it, like if they wouldn't accept me based off of the way that I sold myself with my essays, then maybe Stanford was not the right school for me. And so I think the way I approach the essays is that I wanted to have a balance of narrative, but also answering the questions. I think for the personal statement, when it's like what are the objectives that you hope to achieve? I think for that one, I did like for the first like I would say for like the first third, I would say that essay was very like narrative in terms of giving context about my background, how did I get here to community college, and then that's when I kind of bridged over to really answering the question, okay, now why do you want to transfer and what do you want to achieve? And so I think from then I kind of directly answered the question, but in a way that was very descriptive and gave reason. Like I think there were three different components I spoke of regarding like research, because I know community colleges usually they do not offer like research experience. Also like clinical experience. In my specific region, it was very hard to get any hands-on patient experience, which was kind of necessary. And if you did want to get it, there was usually like a big like price behind it. And also regarding student government, because of how with small it was at community college, and that often made it very kind of limiting in terms of what I was able to do amongst my other fellow officers. And so I think if anything, I use the narrative approach a lot with the other like smaller kind of essays. I think that gave me room to have a little bit more fun per se. I wouldn't say my words were like poetic or anything, but I would say I would just kind of was I used a lot of visual and vivid imagery because that's just the type of writing that I enjoy doing. I want to try to like let them envision what I was experiencing to like the best of my ability. So that's how I approach the essays.
I'll go next. Yeah, kind of what you were saying, Sebastian. Show, don't tell, I think is the big phrase to use here with the application. I don't think I'd actually change anything on my application, as embarrassing as it is to look back on. I think it's a great snapshot of me and where I was at the time. Um, and hold on to it for the future because you'll think it's pretty cool to look back on. Um, but I think I did do a good job of showing and not telling, and um like it is the time too, which was hard for me to work with, but like it's the time to brag about all you've done. And I have a really hard time with admitting anything that I've done. I'm not sure why that is. Uh Imposter syndrome, I think. So just kind of yeah, I lost my thought a little bit there, but just be yourself and make sure you have stories that say that back up your values and actions. And really don't be afraid to be who you are. And actually, I think because I thought Stanford was such a long shot for me, I really was myself because I'm like, oh crap, I have to answer this all in 2 days. I totally forgot to apply for Stanford. I didn't forget to apply for Stanford, but I was like, that's not going to be worth it to put in that much effort if I don't think I'm going to get in. And so, I mean, um, as a result, I really feel I was authentic. Where when I applied for Yale, I was trying to fit into a box of like, what does Yale want from me? And I was looking back and comparing the two applications, and I was authentic. A mess, but that's okay in my Stanford application. And Yale, I didn't sound like myself. So maybe if I had been more authentic in that one, and which is funny because I spent way more time on that application. So hopefully you can learn from that, from my mistakes. Um, just be yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly I wrote most of my essays day of, so they're pretty rough around the edges in terms of word choice and flow. But I would say I'm pretty happy with the content of my essays. I use the longer ones to tell stories about my life, and the shorter ones to kind of, show a little bit about my hobbies and personality. As far as style goes, to answer that question, I wrote in a pretty straightforward way, just being candid about who I am, the different influences and factors that have shaped me and who I want to be in the future. Um, More to kind of specifically respond to the poetic thing. Personally, I would avoid getting extremely poetic. Like I know there's that one essay about the letter S that went viral on TikTok last year, and a lot of people are trying to emulate that. Um, if that style comes naturally to you, go for it, but don't contort yourself because you think it's what the AOs want to hear.
I can go next. I just agree with everything that everybody else said. Um, for me, English is my second language, so it was very difficult to tackle those essays. Barely passed English 1 and 2. So I started with writing bullet points for each question. Like I was like, this is the like, why do you want to come to Stanford? And I was like, I went to high school with this same cool person as came here, and I used to look up to her for so many years. Okay, this is what I want to write about. What makes you what makes you excited about learning? I literally was like, what makes me excited about learning? So I went back and I was like, oh, actually, first time that I had this question was like my grandma was baking something, and I was like, whoa, cool! Like the cake does that? Like it? How do you mix flour and eggs and it is delicious and cute and like puffy? And it's like, so maybe writing bullet points would help if you have no idea what you want to write about, like I didn't. I would say have someone that knows you read your application, but don't have too many comments. I think I had two different people. I had two different people in my CC and my mom read my application, and like just to pick up anything that doesn't make sense. It might make sense to you, but because you lived it, but not other people. And yeah, I think everything that everybody else said, I definitely agree with. You do not want to be so poetic if that's not who you are. If poetry is a part of your life and you're really excited about it, why not? But if like you're in STEM major and like read 5 poems throughout your life, then poetry might not be the best option for you.
Yeah, and I would just say is tap into your transfer centers, writing centers, English professors, people that could write, could read your essay and give you feedback and could give you good feedback. I think that's really important, just anything that you do. The other thing is that I just want to add is I'm a reviewer for an internship. And so I just read the essays and I like rate them and I will tell you that after you read about 20 or 30 of them and you use an AI checker, you could literally pick up. Now it's like when I get to one of the essays, the applications, when I review them, I don't even need to hit the AI check, is you could literally pick it up. So, don't get tempted using that. Because it's now now it's into the systems. It's actually embedded into most application systems. But if you don't even do that, you could pick up AI without even, if you do it long enough, you don't even need to do it. You could pick it up.
Yeah.
And then go ahead. Sorry.
Can I just say something to that? So, I love like the idea of like having other people look over your essay. Um, when you're doing that, um, I couldn't have anybody look over my essays because I know that if I had gotten feedback about very personal stuff, I might have changed it and it would have pulled from my authentic self. So, I just want to give like that also like the flip side.
No, I agree. Yeah, they're not. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. If anybody wants to change your essay, I wouldn't do it. I personally, I would be like, oh, no, it's okay. I'm writing about this. But no, you're absolutely right. Like you write what you want to write, and not like you don't. This is your application and who you are as a person. Um, and don't live somebody else's ideals. I guess I would say.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah, just
quickly
being careful
say,
like who you accept advice from is important. But
yeah,
thank you, Jill. That's
sorry, I would quickly say one thing that kind of sometimes helps me is sometimes instead of asking for feedback, you'll have someone read the essay and then ask them to explain it back to you. And it can kind of that way you can kind of gauge if you're being effective at communicating uh, what you want to say.
Yeah, I'm gonna confess something here. One good, like, I said writing in English is at least was very difficult for me. I wrote too many applications since I got to Stanford. I'm kind of used to it now. There was this one paragraph that I didn't know how to write, so I wrote it in Farsi in my first language, gave it to ChatGPT, and was like, "Give this to me in English." And I copied and pasted that into my application, and then my advisor read that and was like, "This paragraph is off." It's like, okay, we'll try. We'll rewrite that. It shows. So, like that kind of advice I found helpful, but it's definitely who you are and.
All right, I'll ask like the next question or next try to group the next set of questions. Could you go over like briefly like some extracurricular activities that you did or like your work experiences before transferring to Stanford? Specifically, I think these questions are geared towards like activities you did in community college, maybe that helped you get into Stanford.
I can start this one. One thing that I want to tell everyone is that if you have to work and if you have other responsibilities that take you away from doing these cool internships or research or getting good grades, don't hide them behind doors because they are the reasons why you didn't have time to do other things. Talk about it. I worked in a coffee shop. I worked at American Girl. I actually worked at Starbucks, other than the first coffee shop. I was a tutor at my community college. I had to help my sister learn English, help with my family stuff. Those take me away from doing other extracurricular stuff. I had one internship at Kite Pharma. It was very cool. But any internship / volunteering job that was unpaid was unfeasible for me. So like that takes away 60% of the opportunities. But if I don't write about them, if I don't put the Starbucks experience in my application, they don't know what I was doing. What I was doing with my time. So for me, mentorship was very important. I started tutoring at my community college. I was an embedded tutor and then an SI leader. That was what I focused my extracurricular activity on. Regarding student clubs, I wasn't very active. I did join like a Middle Eastern club in my community college, but not as a like president, not as an very active member. I had that internship in Kite Pharma I talked about, and the rest was just really my classes.
So extracurriculars I did, they were very purpose driven. I didn't do them with the thought that I was doing it to get into a school. Um, to be honest. Uh, but I was worried how it would look on my application. So I did, I've always been into politics, government, um, and anthropological kind of things. But I'm going to answer a couple questions that I saw also here that like my community college definitely didn't offer anthropology as a major, so I did general studies and I only took like one anthropology class. Um, so I kind of like pieced together with the very few resources I had at my very tiny community college. I took classes, I definitely had themes that gave me purpose and meaning. So like I was on student government mostly because I was a peer-to-peer mentor where I worked with 50 different freshmen and helped them transition to community college. And that was really when I realized just like how many single moms there were, how food insecurity was a huge issue. And that kind of just like expanded into a few things. Like I ran for student government, I became vice president or vice chair of that. Or no, it was vice president at the time. And then I became like the student representative for student advisory committee, which was all of the it was a committee that had one representative from each campus. And then I became chair of that, which resulted in being a student regent in the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities. So suddenly I was from this tiny community college, but I was representing 50,000 students, like in the government. It was pretty wild, but it was all purpose driven. And so I think Stanford saw that like, even though class wise I was just general studies and just kind of taking random classes, it did all come together. And I was very grateful that they could see through it. But yeah, like I ended up doing an internship at the state capitol, and on paper, it probably looked like I did like a lot of little random stuff, but I think it all revolved around advocacy. And so I mean, I know I keep saying this, but like just don't be afraid to like be your authentic self even when you're exploring extracurriculars. Like don't do it to get into a certain school or to as like Stanford or anything. Like the right school for you, even if it's not Stanford, the right school will see it and value you and you will have a good experience at whatever school you do end up going into. Um, so yeah, I think that's all I want to say there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that I similarly did like a whole bunch of kind of random things. I mean, I had like decent amount of time during my gap between leaving high school and starting college. I mean, I spent a lot of time taking care of my elderly grandmother and my grandfather. I taught myself how to code and then worked as a freelance software developer for a few years. I spent time doing a lot of climate organizing and local environmental justice work. So I don't know. I kind of wanted to kind of make it seem cohesive. So I kind of cut some things and found out ways to integrate other things into my essays and extracurriculars list. The one thing I will add that I think is important is student government. My college, I was very involved. I was president of my student body association and also represented the LA region on the board of the statewide student senate. And I think this is important, especially if you're a community college student. Student government is a great opportunity, especially if you're interested in public service. I think a lot of times people tend to associate it with more like high school student government, which is very limited in scope. But college student body associations often they have like direct ties to college administrators, budgets of millions of dollars to put towards projects that the board thinks can help students. It's a really good way to be able to have an impact and help other people. And I think, uh, yeah, I think a lot of colleges really appreciate that. A huge chunk of at least my transfer class is involved in student government in some capacity.
All right. Would anyone else like to go, or can I move on to the next question? All right. So next question is, what is included in living expenses in the student loan? The student has like mortgage, car expenses, and food. So maybe someone who took out student loans could explain like what's included in that. I think maybe Carla took out student loans, but she might be away from the screen right now. But if there's anyone else who took out any loans for Stanford, yeah, no worries. We can move on to the next question, maybe like circle back when Carla comes back. The next question is, what resources does Stanford offer to support transfer students? Like, are there any transfer specific like clubs or programs that you've seen on campus?
I think what's nice is that Stanford, they really do a great balance of integrating transfers during like the new student orientation, especially within when you're amongst a bunch of like freshmen who are also like they're like kind of during their first year. So and kind of what that entails is that you go to these events with all these frosh, but then what they'll do is that they'll have like these breakout groups where they'll have specific sessions like, oh, just for transfers, or they'll do it like by specific dorms, like for all the frosh as well. And so I think as a transfer, I think they did a very great job at integrating us into the community, because it's already hard as is stepping into a place where everybody already has friends. And as transfers, I think my class was like 40 or 45 of us. And like if you cannot find, like people within just that small amount, then that makes it even more difficult. And so we also have our own transfer advisor who kind of specializes with just dealing with transfers, and I think that's nice because she's working with like a smaller group of students compared to maybe some of the other academic advisors. So that was something I found very helpful. We also do have the Stanford Transfer Network, which is, I believe, like a club on campus, and so that's a great way to get connected as well. And for those that live in Kimball and EVGR, or also in any of the like low rises, high rises, they will often do events for transfers, and they'll be very cognizant about that. So that way it's not as jarring, especially for those who live in Kimball, where a good amount of students in there are also, non-transfers. So I think Stanford, they did a pretty good job with integrating us. I think the hard part is that then it's on you to, find wherever you fit within your community within a Stanford.
Yeah, actually, if you were here yesterday, Dr. Anderson was here. And basically, I think all transfers only have that one person, so to interact with, and I think it's she has about 70 students she works with, 70 or 80 students that she works with, she said.
Generally, I had a really good experience here just adjusting. And I think I kind of fall back into the transfer community. Support here you can really get from anyone. It's not like that if there is no resources that it's like because you are a transfer student, you can't use that. If anything, you can advocate yourself if you like missed the deadline or something. And like this is only for sophomore, you transferred in as a junior, you can still use it. But the community is very meaningful to me. Transfer students are great. That has been my biggest support system, plus major advisors, just academic advisors. You have to ask to get it, just like community college. I feel like someone also in the Q&A asked that. It doesn't matter if resources are limited or not. You have to ask for it, even if it looks like a stupid question. Just ask for it. I literally, first day of community college, I walked in, I asked the first person wearing an SMC shirt, hi, I just came to the States. I don't know what I'm doing. I think I want to start studying. What do I do? Just like, just just ask your questions, and I think that's the best way to get answers. And it's the same thing here.
So I'm sorry, I missed the question actually because I ran to the bathroom.
Yeah,
Was
no
it
worries.
about like how our
Financial
transition?
aid, yeah, financial aid, supporting money,
Oh,
loan,
okay.
financial aid, all that
Yeah, can I
expenses,
talk a little
food.
bit about the community too, like adjusting to the
Yeah.
entire community? Yeah, okay. So for me, I'm a Jack Kent Cook scholar. So I have quite a bit covered, which I'm very, very fortunate there. Um, which has been very different from my life up until this point. Um, so I guess, yeah, I don't really have much more to say there. Like it covers quite a bit. I'm so lucky. But I just you were talking a little bit, Gazal, about like adjusting community wise. And I wanted to say, like, I had kind of a difficult time adjusting. So, like, I love the transfer community. We have a great mixture of people, very diverse. For me, I think it was like the combination of being in grad housing with a child and like being the only one with a child that I knew of. And that's just a totally different life life phase than where a lot of transfers at are at. So it was a little tough to be here at first because I also brought so much of what I call my past life to here. And I have to say that like first of all, it's very normal to like go through all of these different phases. It's not like a boom, you're at Stanford, everything is wonderful and golden. It there were so many transitions like financially, for example, I spent just $3,000 driving across the country with my son. And like maxed out some of my credit cards. And like and then I had to pay to move in early so that he could start school, like little things like that. But then also like being a little triggered by like being in a brand new place where I felt like the only one. Um, and all that that entails and going from survival mode to thriving and I have to say like Ingrid has been a huge Dr. Anderson has been an amazing help with that but so many people in the community they get that here at Stanford. And so it's been a long journey, but so many people have helped me through that. And now I can finally say I'm in a place. It took a year, a solid year, where now I'm finally able to take advantage of all that Stanford is. But I do want to say, like, wherever any of you end up, it's it's a dream come true, but it's okay if you have a past to work through along like it's just it's more than okay. It's who you are. And um there's no one answer to anything. It's all about how you grow in the process. I'm going off on a tangent here, so I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I guess to quickly circle back on financial, I mean, I guess that question was specific to student loans, but might as well, I feel like I'll speak about the financial aid. So I didn't take out any loans because Stanford's financial aid was stellar, honestly. That's also why it was, the top school that I chose. It gave me the best aid out of all the other ones. What I will say though is that given recent governmental changes and also for transfers who need to stay a third year, and I don't mean transfers that come in as a sophomore. I mean transfers like myself who came in as a junior because this is my third year at Stanford. Most transfers need to stay a third year just because usually the major and requirements. But the third year process of getting financial aid has now been a little bit more difficult, meaning they are less willing to give as much money. And the main reason why is because we are grouped together with students that need a fifth year. And because they saw a lot of students were taking advantage of the fifth year, and this isn't for co-terms or anything, but those that are like, I guess you could say, are super seniors, they've been locking down on that. And so for one, I don't like how they group transfers with them because we, do not really have time to plan they had plenty. Like we need to be able to finish our degree in a timely manner. And so as a result, they are like to make like this sometimes they tried to make me take out a loan actually for my third year financial aid, but then I argued with them endlessly and was able to get my usual package. And so I think the biggest part is you're going to have to advocate for yourself if you envision that you will need to stay a third year. It's not impossible to get your usual financial aid. I would just say it'll be a little bit harder this round, which is a bit unfortunate, but it's not impossible. And also kind of circling back to community, I think Stanford itself did a good job, but I think in my cohort, there were definitely some issues with community. And I think the only people I was able to like, I guess, find solace in was like my fellow community college transfers. I feel like they were the only ones that I saw had the same vision that I did. Like I came to Stanford to take advantage of the resources, get my degree, and really make the most of my experience. I wasn't here to kind of, I feel well, for one, I feel like you don't come to Stanford for the party scene. Like we have parties, but it's not great. Like it's not out of this world. And so I think like, social wise, like I think like I'm a very proud of my transfer student identity, but I realized that staying in Kimball and being in that transfer bubble did not work for me at all, especially because a lot of it was like high school type of drama, but this may just be specific to my cohort. And I was like, I cannot deal with this. Like there were many days where I hated being at Kimball, and Kimball is also where they put transfers who are under 25 years old, by the way, for it. And Kimball itself, though, is objectively a really nice dorm, I do want to say. But community was just hard in that sense. And also as a transfer, like, it's hard being friends with other people who aren't transfers because they already have their friend groups. But luckily for me, I was able to enter those spaces and find my own people outside of transfers. And also, I also encourage, you all, especially within your first year, to, find those people outside the transfer community, because I feel like that's the only way you're going to grow. And so, yeah, I think community was kind of like a double-edged sword in that case. And also with transfers, there's not a lot of us, so there's not a lot of options per se. Like I remember during NSO, there were two transfers that knew from the start they were not going to be friends with anybody. They just did not vibe. And so they immediately like found other people right away. I wouldn't fully encourage that. I think you should still try and make an effort. But being a transfer looks different for everybody. So don't feel like you need to, I don't know, fit a certain mold about, especially like with staying where like in Kimball or wherever that you need to be. I think you should take some risks and explore outside of that, because I would say those definitely paid off for myself.
Yeah, I really appreciate your advices. I might have came off wrong and I want to like correct myself a little bit. In no way, shape, or form, this is an easy experience. It's for sure difficult. But like I also maxed out my credit card just moving. And the financial aid packet is great. It covers your classes, your dorm, and your food. But like it doesn't cover textbooks, and we don't have EOPS here, so that has been a struggle for me. And I'm like, I really, at least first quarter, I don't have time to work, so I'm just kind of trying to figure out how I can manage finances. But I think our cohort, we were very lucky that there are so many community college transfer students, and also like I have this group around me who are very similar to me in beliefs, and I understand that a big part of that was definitely luck just to find those people.
I just love what you said, Sebastian, about like that all really resonated with me, like because I couldn't quite find my people within the transfer students. Um, but they were like the closest to this expectation I had of like, oh, I need a diverse group of people. And I think like I really latched onto them for my first year, which was very, very helpful to find like that home base. But I've discovered that like once I expanded that and was like, oh, wait, I'm different, but also all these other people are different, and finding the shared human experience. Like some of my closest friends have completely opposite life experiences from me, but we have shared values. We have like I have two best friends from Morocco, totally different upbringing, but like it can be it looks more than just life experience and expanding and being willing to find it elsewhere. Like for me, I started as a student worker in the Dean of Students office. And I mean, even just like reconnecting with I used to be an executive assistant. So it was like reconnecting with that side of myself made me feel like that place is my home. And I made friends with staff and like all different kinds of people. And so yeah, I just really appreciated that. Community can mean whatever you want it to mean.
All right. Great responses to to that question. And our next question is, how are you able to like balance and handle school life and like the extracurriculars or academics you're doing and also your personal life? Are there any tips for managing your workload?
Use a calendar, please. Use something to track everything. I feel like, especially as Stanford students, like there's always those interactions like, oh my God, we should catch up and get lunch. And it never happens. Put it in the calendar. And, and especially like it attach their email as well. So you hold themselves accountable. I think with Stanford, like,
Y'all have like $1,000 phones, and nobody uses the calendar, which I'm always like amazed. Mine, you open it up and you like I get like, I get really like, I don't know if you could see it, but like everything is like scheduled for me, broken down, and yeah, use your calendar, guys. And this is not like you don't have to be a Stanford student. You could be anywhere in your life. Do it because you'll forget. I don't care how smart you are, you will forget things. I write it down and I still sometimes forget things.
exactly. And also I use Good Notes and there's like a planner feature on there. And usually I kind of distribute like what work I want to do and what extracurriculars for what day. So I try to spread that out pretty nicely. At first it was impossible because like, being first board, I'm like, oh my God, I have a piece set due every single week in my physics class or whatever. But I think if you plan out accordingly, it's very feasible to balance the rigorous academic load with, research and other things. Like for me, I have like two research jobs, both in the Department of like anesthesia. I'm also a sustainable Stanford for like the Living Lab Fellowship and Stanford Climate and Health. I'm one of the co-directors. But I also dance for one of Stanford's competitive hip hop teams called Legacy. Also, we are performing at Breaking Grounds next Friday. So for my fellow Stanford students, please show up if you wish. The tickets are free. Anyways, and that's like a great way that I find to like balance my own mental health and that's the thing. Like I feel like Stanford, like, yeah, I came in here with a certain vision, but I also was like, I was like, I've been wanting to do like some fun things I've been wanting to like try before. And so I think Stanford is the right place to do that and take those risks. And I think because I plan everything out accordingly, like I have biweekly practices that are 6 hours, so I know I can chunk certain amounts of time for certain parts of the day. And so I think that allows me to, have a pretty balanced schedule. Of course, there's moments where it's difficult, especially during midterms when you have to kind of take time away from things in order to just kind of dedicate more of that towards studying. But I feel like I've been able to I've maintained like my usual like kind of lifestyle like I did at community college. I will say though, Stanford will force you to prioritize what you really love. Like I feel like there were so many clubs I wanted to do, but then I realized I was like, shoot, with this time in the quarter system, there's no way I can do all of this. But at the same time, it's allowed me to focus on what really matters to me. And I think that also has allowed me to find other people outside of the transfer community with being involved in research and clubs and all these performing arts groups. So yeah, it's definitely possible. That's like my little takeaway message.
So scheduling for me, I'm going through a big transition time right now. Like I feel like my entire first year, I was good with scheduling because it's really being at Stanford has been my first experience in my life really of feeling safe, having my basic needs taken care of. And so I felt a little guilt for this at first, but like I really like began to schedule like self-care time. So and like not taking easy classes, but like only taking 12 units instead of 15, or like pushing myself because I knew that that was going to be a big thing for me, is transitioning from surviving to thriving. And but now this quarter, um I finally am feeling really good here at like really, really good, and feeling like I am finally able to take advantage of all that Stanford is and what it has to offer. And things have just exploded for me, like clubs. I was nominated by or I was voted in by ASSU to be like a student rep on staff and faculty committees, which is now going to take a big portion of my time. Like I was just accepted to notations for cultural rhetoric. Like I'm doing transfer 101. I'm opening a food pantry in the dean's office. Like there's so many really fulfilling things to do. And what I'm discovering is that for the where I always had to be like doing really well in my classes, and that felt like a survival thing. I'm now rediscovering what my purpose and what actually makes me fulfilled when it's not related to survival, and like, oh, all my needs are going to be taken care of. So now I can actually do things. And so now I'm finding like I'm not like super behind, but I'm way more behind than I feel comfortable with in one of my classes in particular. Um, and it's so I'm really working on this schedule thing and like it's a really exciting thing though, but calendars are key, and time manage like 2 hours for I'm going to accomplish this within this time, and not letting myself get distracted. And what's nice here at Stanford is that everyone's kind of in this same boat of being pulled in a million different directions. Um, so what's really nice is like it's okay if you take a day or two to respond to a text. You don't have to respond right away. And people just know that everyone else is busy. So, yeah, so if you have any tips from anyone that's got any tips for how to manage that, but it doesn't come naturally for anyone, I don't think. So, yeah.
I'm struggling significantly with that. Honestly, I'm going to like ask Sebastian later to like go get a coffee with him and ask his advice, because just first 3 months in, I'm still transitioning. I just managed to like sleep 8 hours and eat 3 meals per day, and that's my accomplishment for this quarter.
So I know we're kind of like at the hour,
Last
or
question.
yeah, we'll wrap it up. We could do like a rapid fire like
I would do last
around.
question. I would say, if you get to give one advice, if you could travel in time and give yourself one advice before you're applying, what would it be?
I would say learn how to treat yourself. I think when you're applying to like, going through the transfer admissions process, and for me, I was applying to 16 schools because I was paranoid. I was having to fill out a lot of applications and essays. And I think I'm guilty of this myself, where I feel like I grew up in this very gung-ho, like academic mindset. So I feel like I cannot treat myself unless I get this next big accomplishment. And so I realized that I was living like a pattern where it was like, oh, I just finished my college application, but no, I have to worry about this. And oh, I just got accepted to Stanford, but oh, no, I can only celebrate until I get this next job or something at Stanford. Like, I realized that that's not sustainable. And if you keep doing that, you're never going to learn what it is to actually take a break and to celebrate yourself. And so that's one thing I wish I did more of. And honestly, I was able to do some of it. Like, for example, when I finished my Stanford application, I think that was my last application. Like my friend and I, we like went to the beach after, because I'm from SoCal, where we're not that far from the beach. And we went to like In-N-Out and enjoyed and just had a great time. And I feel like you need to find what that is for you, and find people who are going to be supportive of you. I feel like quality over quantity, over time you realize who is going to slip through the cracks and who stays and who doesn't. And I feel like at community college I found some amazing people that I'm still close with to this day. And so it's foundational that you have people who, for one, are going to support you, but two, who know who, like, with what you are going through. I feel like knowing that my friend like she knew that I was applying to all these schools. It also motivated her to apply to more schools. And so we were kind of going through this process together. And I think it made me a bit more sane throughout the entire process. And so celebrate those little wins, because trust me, you're gonna regret it when you don't. Like right now, I'm studying for the MCAT and I plan on taking in January, and it's kind of like hell right now. But there's someone else in my dorm, in my co-op, who's studying for the LSAT, and so we're holding each other accountable. And so that's like kind of my big takeaway point, is like kind of celebrate those little wins and learn how to take breaks even when it's very hard.
I think my biggest tip would be find community, and you do not need to look like or be similar to people around you, but just find community and hold each other's hand to get to places, even if you have different goals. My friend who I almost forgot to submit Stanford's application. I had it ready, I almost forgot to submit. He reminded me to submit that, and like literally a week after, he was like, no, I'm not applying to USC, it's so expensive. I literally pushed, he started the application that was due 12 midnight, 8 a.m. that morning, and he's at USC right now. So like you might have different goals, and just hold each other's hand and support each other's, and that's what got me through.
Yeah, I'd say my advice would be to be authentic and to kind of block out the noise. I'm somebody who tends to worry a lot about if I'm doing things correctly or if I'm missing something, but I think it's really important to just speak from the heart and to really stay true to who you are. I know it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's right. Also, quick second piece of advice, start early. Don't do what I did.
I'm gonna say give yourself grace that regardless of what you've gone through up until this point, if you have been through challenges the way I have, you're only human and there's only so much you can do. And also, like, you're not a machine. You you need people. You need surround yourself with the right people is another piece of advice. Because it's very easy, especially if you're a person that is continuously growing, to get stuck in some relationships that might not help you reach that next level that you want to reach. You can still like stay with them, but like don't be afraid to grow within yourself and be yeah. Also, I kind of want to throw out there, like, apply for the Jack Kent Cook Scholarship. It's the transfer scholarship. I kind of mentioned it earlier. I just want to put that out there. Jobin put the link in the chat, and that's how I think I got here. So look into it. It's a great program.
Um, Advice I would give before the application, like I didn't know that I went on a webinar before and I heard somebody from this different college and they were saying that colleges now they really care about people who care about people to give back to the communities. And I feel like if you care about your community, go out there and help in any way you can. If you can volunteer, it really does look good giving back to the community in any way, whether it's like getting a job at your school and being like a student ambassador, feeding the homeless, helping a shelter, anything at all, like find a way to give back because schools love that in general, and also like I recommend getting, if you can, a job at school because I was able to build a community within that and all my supervisors um kept up with everything in my life. If they weren't there behind me, rooting for me and cheering me on for everything I do, I don't know if I would have made it. City College was extremely supportive and use all the resources you can at your disposal because it will definitely help you. Try not to be so shy of asking for help because that is how I got to Stanford, is advocating for myself and asking for help in every avenue I could.
Alrighty. I think everybody's gone. So thank you again, everyone. I'm sure we could keep you here till 10 o'clock at night, but you all have to go, and thank you again for coming and being generous with your time and your story and your journey. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.